What up? What you don't see when we start the video is Mark claps in front of the camera. Unless we leave that in, but I don't think so. I think it's very loud. We're looking at some fight previews, which is such a gift, man. Like when you start to really dig into these, really dig into them, it's exciting. The biggest thing about fights these days at this level is it's getting more and more complicated. If you know me, I try not to harp on the same idea, although the same themes run through what we're looking at. By the way, Kevin Lee versus Tony Ferguson is what we're talking about here. But one of the same themes that runs through for me is that what these guys are doing is changing dramatically. We may not always see it, but a lot of us do. You look at Tony Ferguson, nobody fought like Tony Ferguson 5 years ago. Nobody. Tony Ferguson didn't fight like Tony Ferguson 5 years ago. They're changing dramatically. And I see my job as trying to figure out what they're doing really and how to describe it in a way that's of value to you. And it gets trickier and trickier. These two are new. The way that they move is new, and the way that they think is new. And it's the way that they think and perform in battle that is at the root of what makes both of these men so special and what makes this fight so special. If we look at what they are, sometimes we'll try to compare, you know, how does one strike compared to the other, or what does the one do with the top position, and how does the other work the bottom game against it? If we try to compare those things with these guys, it's imperative that we compare how they've been built. All right? How we've created what is the combat machine we call Tony Ferguson, how it was put together, and how we've created that beast known as Kevin Lee, okay? And I think if we start to look at what the process of building them was, that gives us some real value. Quite a few years ago, well, quite a few is an exaggeration. 2 years ago, I sat down with Stephen Thompson, and I had these two little, the sort of a plot of how to build your entertainment systems. In the back of one was remote wire to your TV, bear with me please, to your CD player, to your stereo, and the spider web perfectly laid out. Spider web of your entertainment system. All of the components connected in a certain way that connects to this one box, perfectly laid out. And I think everybody knows somebody like this. Maybe it's a stereo system and they've got speakers all over their house and everything is color-coded, perfectly laid down, taped into just the right place so it ends up in one plug into the back. And then we know somebody else who's got this insane system. And this analogy can be used for a million things, but got this insane system. And if you look behind the TV, it's just coils of shit and Band-Aids and splitters and duct tape and two other things and an adapter moving this thing onto that thing. And which one is better? Whichever one sounds better or looks better or performs better is better, right? And Kevin Lee is that well-built system, perfectly connected and laid there. And as this moves into this, it builds on this. And as you make him stronger, you add a different element to his wrestling game. And as the wrestling game anchor happens, you start adding boxing. But then he realizes that boxing is a little too structured for the art of boxing, and it becomes a little wider. And it slowly connects, and it can be added and adapted and changed and edited in such a way that he seems to have kind of an unlimited potential of growth. You can build on what Kevin Lee is. You can build on his mind. You can build on his skills. He can get better in many ways. Tony Ferguson is that other thing. Band-Aids and duct tape. The reason that's so hard is because you don't fucking understand it, right? You don't understand it. RDA didn't understand Tony Ferguson. And that one to me, and this is very different. Kevin is a different animal. But if you watch Tony Ferguson versus Rafael dos Anjos, RDA is basically fighting as if we're both going to fight the way that we fight. This is, we go into the gym and everybody learns to fight this way. Let's fight that way. And I'm faster, better, I'm better on top, I'm stronger, I'm gonna beat you. And Tony's like, we don't fight that way where I come from. I don't fight that way at all. In fact, I train with a fucking Wing Chun dummy and I strike from kicking distance. Because why does Tony, and there's a breakdown that I did a while back when Tony was supposed to fight Khabib. It's one of my favorites. I really enjoyed it. That thing that we improperly call kicking distance, that area from which I can kick you, is to Tony Ferguson, that's not kicking distance. That's whatever the fuck Tony Ferguson wants distance. And this is something I talked about when McGregor was attempting to go and beat the best boxer in the world. Why do you not punch from kicking distance? Wrong, it's not kicking distance. Not where Tony Ferguson is concerned. It's just the fourth range, or the outside orbit, or the outside range. We can call it any of these things, but when Tony's fighting, you cannot call it kicking distance because Tony punches from there. Now, how, and we've gone over this many times, and the reason I mention it over and over is because often I've found that once you do that enough, a couple more people, and they start sharing an idea and it sticks. Then you hear Brian Stan mentioning it because he's absorbed it from somewhere out in the world, and that's how ideas get shared. You don't mention them once, you mention them a number of times. But why can Tony punch from a distance that you can kick? Even as I do this motion, I don't know if you can see it, you can imagine right there, this looks like some kung fu motion, right? You've seen this. Boxers, of course, bam, bam, bam. But in other martial arts, you've seen this type of move. Does that, from your angle, it looks fine? In fact, I'm traveling to Russia, probably while you're watching this, to commentate 5 days, 12 to 16-hour days of Sanda Senshao, which is a Chinese martial arts that has evolved into full contact. This 5-day deep dive, I'm going to come back with so much amazing information by being forced to dive into that for so long. But so Tony, you will see him strike in many different ways. He didn't invent them. Even if he's never seen them before, he still didn't invent them. Humans have moved that way many times in many different eras, fighting against many different types of foes. As martial arts were invented to fight against an oppressed people, they were used in very different ways. So Tony will strike from that distance. Why is that wrong? Why did RDA's training partners not do that? Because when you do that, you are there to get countered, okay? Again, I know we've talked about this a lot, but I just need to keep going there. I want this to be a part of conversation that we hear every time we're talking about fighting, the same way that, got to have more head movement and distribute your weight this way to land this, or this man's a better striker than this guy, or whatever. I want this to be a part of the conversation. So I keep putting it out there until it's a normal thing. But from this distance, Tony overextends, he gets countered. The martial arts mindset, the permanent martial arts mindset, is solve the problem. The fixed mindset says, I better not punch from there. I better only kick from there and move forward before I punch, or else I'll get countered. The growth mindset says, it's going to take me a long time and a lot of work, but I will cure the issue of getting countered. I will solve the problem of getting countered. Then I will be able to use this technique that will be fairly unfamiliar to my opponent because he considers it wrong. See? So these are the Band-Aids behind Tony's machine. These are the Band-Aids and the splitters and the adapters and all of these complex bullshit in the back of his television and stereo that is Tony Ferguson. And it's that makes him dangerous. This is something we've talked about for a lot in the past as well. But as you, the person on the other side of the camera, comes in against me to get to any type of grappling environment, you have to pass through space. And there's this kind of dead zone in the middle. It's a nice place to land uppercuts and hooks and elbows and knees. Some people call it the pocket. And as you travel through the pocket, you can get a hold of somebody and then travel in deeper where you can get their hips or their leg or their body. In that zone, Tony has turned that into an offensive zone. People, and not just the typical striking way, but he calls it snap down city, or at least he said it to me before, and now that's what I call it. But he said it to me. I don't know if it's his standard thing, but to me, that's the standard description of it now. Snap down city. Old school wrestling, snap the head down to a front headlock or front face lock position. Now, if you go back, who's that dude who kicks real hard that he fought? Edson. You don't have to... Edson Barbosa, congratulations, because when all you have to say is, who's that dude who kicks really hard, and people immediately know who you are, you have made your mark, sir. That is excellent. Snapdown City against Edson Barbosa, you see it, and now he hurls his body, his center of mass, straight back, drags him to the ground. Now we have used that pocket as an entryway to get to the ground. Now again, bear in mind, the pocket is usually a transition zone to get to a hold or a high crotch, a single, a body lock, whatever. It's a transition zone usually that you must pass through to get to that. He uses that as a doorway to the ground and a threat immediately. And once he's in there and he's into some type of darce or modified darce in many approaches, the dude has a spider web of sequences he can attack you. So this is the shit that Kevin Lee and anybody else who fights Tony has to deal with. And it's not easy. But then what is Kevin Lee? And this is why these two are so interesting. And this is also why we can't just say, well, they're both wrestlers with, but it's just not there. They're so far beyond that. We need new ways to examine them. That's what we're doing. That's our job. Kevin Lee is a fucking 90s baby. Dude was born in the 90s. So it's 2017 right now. He's 25 years old. He's born in 1992. His whole world is different. Kevin's my friend.
Kevin's younger than 25.
Kevin's 24, 25. Mark's going to look it up. Yeah, Kevin could be, it was Kelvin we said was 25. Kevin's 22. Kevin Lee is... his little brother Keith. I've commentated every one of Keith's professional fights. Isn't that cool? Kevin is 25. Born in 1992. Maybe 93. I don't know. Maybe 91. I don't know. But somewhere around there. I'm not a mathematician. Keith Lee, his brother, is 21. So he was born in 1997. You know what I mean? These guys' whole world is different. The way they've used technology, their brains work differently. The way that they interface with complex ideas is different. Instead of thinking, they think faster. They see the world differently. These are truths. And you know what? The next stage of fighters, the 2000 babies. The 2000s. There'll be a kid within the next year and a half fighting in the UFC who was born in the year 2000. And you have to see that these guys interface with the world differently. They're not limited by many of our limiting beliefs that people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s are. Which is why the world is changing so quickly. Because these guys believe the world can change quickly. They believe their world can change quickly. They believe they can change quickly. And they're right. Because if you believe it and you live that way and that's your perspective, you'll make it so. And that's what Kevin Lee is. Look at Kevin, right? Not only has he come up and got better and better, and he's progressing. Again, it's yes, he's improvisational. If you were comparing him to somebody who fought in 2014, he'd be creative and experimental and unorthodox. But compared to Tony Ferguson, he is much more organized. And that's what he has to make this fight about. He has to make this fight about those things. He has to understand Tony's game enough, but also try to make it irrelevant. And nobody's really done that yet. We haven't seen anyone do that yet. Who beat Tony? It was Johnson, I think. Tony, I believe, has one loss in the UFC, and I believe it was Johnson.
Yeah, it might have been for the
Yeah.
finale.
Yeah. If you look at what Tony's done over the last number of years, what you're looking at between these two are two guys who right now are quite sure that they are unbeatable. It was Johnson, right? Yeah. You see how different Tony is from that day to this day? And Tony knows this because I know he watches this stuff. I know a lot of these guys do. They tell me. What up, Tony Ferguson? Kevin Lee said he was going to bite you, by the way, when we were on the TKO broadcast. But you know I'm a fan of both you gentlemen. When Tony Ferguson loses, and he will lose, I don't know if it's going to be this coming weekend. I don't know who's going to win this fight. I can't tell you. I could guess. I could be right, 49 or 53% of the time. I don't know, though. And neither do you. Even if you guess or make a pick and you're right, you still didn't know. And these two guys are certain that they're both going to win. but only one of them will. But when Tony Ferguson loses, he will lose spectacularly. That is the nature of how he fights. He will win spectacularly, and he will lose spectacularly. And who's my guy that Eddie Alvarez is, I can't remember names today. Sometimes it happens to me. Eddie's doing the show with Justin Gaethje. So Justin Gaethje has never lost. Justin Gaethje knows with 100% certainty that when he loses, he's going to get laid out. There is no other way Justin Gaethje is going to lose a fight. He's going to lose in spectacular fashion when it happens. And he's come to peace with that. True peace with it. You see it. It's one of the first things he mentioned when he came to the UFC is, when I go down, this is how I'm going down. And Tony's the same way. And Tony's also at peace with it. And that's why they can be so free. That's why they can be so fucking free. Because they're already at peace with it. Fuck. I just got myself just right jacked for this fight now. It's an incredible, 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 incredible fight. Biggest thing for Kevin when I'm thinking out loud like this is he has to be just as free as Tony, but yet manage make this a controllable fight. But nobody's done that with Ferguson. Fuck, this is a good fight. Wow. It's incredible, incredible fight. Wow. 2017, and hey, might go one round. The key for us, the audience, is they are both in their optimum state of performance when this fight goes down. If they are, maybe it goes 25 minutes of brilliance, maybe it goes 12 minutes of brilliance, but it's gonna be brilliant. This is, and if you know me, and if you're watching on my YouTube channel, it's because you do. I don't give a fuck about rankings. I don't give a fuck about interim belts. I don't care about who deserves what. I don't care. I care about the beauty of combat. And this fight is the greatest level of combat that one can make between any two fighters. I'm not saying they're the best two guys in any, but bringing these two guys together right now, you're making something special. Sean Shelby, you fucking killed this one, man. So what have we learned from all this? I don't know, man. We got some new ideas to think about. We have some new things, perspectives to look at in the fight. And, I'm not just going to say who's the better striker, who's the better grappler, who's got the better takedown defense, and here's my pick. I'm not going to do that. You know what? I don't believe in that anymore. So I hope I've given you something to enrich this fight for you, because I fucking just got myself pretty excited. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends. Blackout.